What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today, Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. I am one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, the Marquette Heat, joining us from that seat with the broomstick in hand. This podcast will be grand. Troy Sergey. Hey, Troy, how's it going?
Going good, Sean. Going good. Another Monday.
Yeah, another
As if we're
Monday
recording.
without a Pistons win. Mother, it's fine.
How many Mondays is this now?
Oh, gosh.
I think it's 7.
So,
I actually think it's 7.
So, all right. Let's do the math. So, the last time the Pistons won was October 28th. So, that was a Saturday. So, that means that we were able to talk about a win on October 30th. It has been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is our 6th. This is our 5th or 6th pod since. So the streak could break tonight as of recording. The Pistons are facing off against the in-season tournament runner-up Indiana Pacers, which, by the way, what an absolute insane thing that, like, I know it's just part of the season and it's just one of those things where, it was never like going to just, pause the season, but how weird is it that they just played for a tournament like championship on Saturday night and then nope, you're back on Monday in Detroit. Like no turnaround time if you're the Pacers whatsoever. Just insanity.
That's the league, though. That's just the league. That's the nature of it. So
yeah, but it's like a team. I mean, it's a team's hanging a banner for a game that happened 2 days ago. That's just insane to me. But real quick, Troy, actually, I do want to ask you what your thoughts were on that finals game. Because obviously we're going to talk a whole lot of Pistons, and we'll talk more in depth about the tournament as a whole as the podcast goes on. But just that game, as someone that lives in Indiana, been able to see that team a lot, really been able to, grow a fresh perspective and, grow like a special relationship with that team. What were your thoughts of that performance, and how excited are you as someone that lives a half hour from their arena to be able to go down and see what those guys can do?
Yeah, it feels pretty good. I guess kind of. Obviously, I would rather have that be the Pistons, but we're talking about the Pacers right now. We're giving credit where credit's due, and
Troy, you just had to throw the jab. Come on, no, I'm kidding.
No, it was so fun watching that game Monday night on TV against the Celtics. They were definitely the underdog. They held Jason Tatum pretty good. I guess they let him ball, but then they held the other players to limited points and really went on a run that last 3 or 4 minutes of the game to make it to Vegas. And then, of course, an underdog again against the Bucks, beat Giannis. So you beat Tatum, you beat Giannis, you beat the Bucks, Celtics. That's 2 of the top Eastern Conference teams, favorites to win the Eastern Conference championship, to go to the finals. And to do that, tough. But those guys just have grit to them. Tyrese Halliburton is a star, an absolute star in the making. Actually, I wouldn't even say the making anymore. I would just say he is a star, period.
Oh, he's here. He is here. Straight up here.
He is here. Seeing guys like Buddy Hield compete has been fun. I've always been a fan of him, even since college. Seeing kind of just how you have guys that want to play basketball too, like a Bruce Brown and Obi Toppin and a Miles Turner. I mean, these are guys that have played decent roles on teams all their careers, and now to be pieced with a guy like Halliburton, I think just is going to evolve their game even more. And this team, I think, can actually. Okay, here's what I want to say before I say my point. Name me one NBA team in the Eastern Conference that wants to see these guys in the first round.
I can't.
I can't. I can't either. No one wants to face these guys because it's a matchup nightmare, especially the guy at the one spot, the point guard position. We just talked about his name, Tyrese Halliburton.
Yep. The Lakers obviously won the NBA Cup, but the Indiana Pacers, in my opinion, won the in-season tournament because, to be able to have those 3 high-profile games, to, be insanely competitive against all of the, against those powers in the Eastern Conference. And on top of that, for Tyrese Halliburton to definitively show he's ready to compete deep in the playoffs, now. Like just put a team around that guy and just watch him compete for years to come. You know what I mean? And I think that's exactly what you're hearing from the reporting is that, the Pacers are getting ready to, like look at making some moves and getting aggressive and positioning themselves, to start taking another step forward, right? And, like kind of speaking of teams that are looking to potentially make a trade, the Detroit Pistons, according to James Edwards III, the Pistons are considering and looking at potential moves and trades to make in the coming weeks. One thing to note is as of right now, no, they are not currently looking to move anyone that would be of the core four, which would obviously be Cade, Asar, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Duren. Now, Troy, there was also another report that came out earlier today from Shams Charania about PJ Tucker with the Los Angeles Clippers, and namely how he's frustrated with this role in Los Angeles, how they might be looking to possibly find him a new role either on the team or in another team. So essentially, they're going to look to trade PJ Tucker. Obviously, no one's coming in saying the Pistons are going to turn their season around with a guy like, just because of PJ Tucker for his on the court play, especially at this current stage of the game. Not saying that. However, I do think adding a PJ Tucker type of guy could be exactly what this team needs in a locker room standpoint. It could be very akin to how Joe Ingles is helping the Orlando Magic right now, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think like even just a small trade, even just a jolt in the arm of a maneuver to this roster can really make an impact? Because I think right now it just feels like at the very least a jolt in the arm is needed for this team.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really all that would be is a jolt in the arm. I think he makes this team better, but I mean, he doesn't push them in any direction to compete really. I mean, he's just a guy, a savvy veteran that could come in, play good defense, and nail a couple of 3-pointers. I mean, it's really nothing more complex than that. But also,
Well, it's a little deeper. He locker room wise, I mean, he is known as like one of the best vets to have in your
right.
locker room in the
And
league
I
from
was
that
gonna
standpoint.
say, even though it's simple, the
Yep.
simpleness is maybe what you need.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good point. And I think honestly, it kind of comes back to like one of the things that the team was saying about like, you know, like the Pistons just need to hit some singles. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they just need to get some simple things. And like if you can bring in a guy who, has shown that, and not saying that he's this now, but a guy who, can space the floor, a guy who can play reliable defense, who's been, like alongside stars for years, a guy who played alongside, like a James Harden, someone who's won a lot of basketball games, and I think on the other hand, like I know people want the Pistons like look for the star and like make like the panic move, but I do think, in a sense, obviously you want to see this team, get in the right direction and like to drastically improve. But if there is anything that gives me solace, it's that they're not looking to trade any of those big guys at this moment just because of the streak that they're going on. Because that would be a move that the Pistons of 6, 7, 8 years ago would have probably made 7, 8 games ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, like, and like, I was even thinking about this today. Like, Pistons fans, we think fondly of things like the Brandon Jennings era all the time. Like, oh man, just take me back to that. Well, you know what it cost us to get Brandon Jennings? Chris Middleton, who is absolutely awesome for, for Milwaukee for years to come, which was so that in itself was a panic trade. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, I don't want history to repeat itself, even though it right now is in a really ugly way. At the very least, this team's being way more mindful about the talent that they have in house.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, I think though, from a fan perspective, and I've said this so many times, the trauma of all those losses when we're competing and we're trying to win and just loss after loss after loss, it gets to you as a fan.
Oh yeah, of
Um,
course.
it's just yes, panic mode. Okay, winning now and rebuilding to put in pieces are two different ways. Even if you end up with the same record, say one record, even if you end up with a worse record, say you only win 20 games this year, say you only win 15 games this year, versus 30 wins when your core and your final masterpiece is a Brandon Jennings and a Greg Monroe, right? And an Andre Drummond. Your masterpiece, even though they win more games, that's the ceiling because that's the masterpiece versus this young core, even though we suck and haven't won a game since October, there still is room to develop.
Mm-hmm. You could only go up from here.
You can only go up from here. Yes.
Yeah, and it's like, and candidly, I know it's difficult for everyone, right? And it's at a certain point when you get to 19 straight losses, it's like, there's only so many different ways where you could just say this team needs to get a win. This team needs to get a win, but in purple. This team needs to get a win, but in blue. You know what I mean? It's like the reality of it is this team just needs a win. And obviously, that needs to come in the form of winning a basketball game. But I mean, that also needs to happen, in a form of any sign of momentum. And I do think that, it is apparent that, there does need to be changes around the margins because the biggest thing that's really been a hurdle to this team because it's not like there haven't been moments where they've been competitive, or it's not like there haven't even been moments where the offense or where like the starting unit hasn't been great because there has been. I mean, Cade's been playing really good basketball this year, despite, this really rough stretch that they've been on. But whenever that bench unit comes in, it just seems like they've just absolutely been, just been getting torched. And I don't know what's been going on with Alec Burks. Like I certainly don't think that he's just permanently washed as an NBA player, but I mean, that guy used to be a microwave. He used to come in and get you easy points and, like spread the floor, play solid defense. Like he was someone that was like our most consistent player, like all throughout like the beginning of this season, arguably at points last season, especially when Bojan went out, right?
Right.
And now he's like the microwave where you throw in a hot pocket for 2 minutes, but somehow you take a bite and there's still chunks of ice in the middle. And it's just like, dude, what happened? Like you've been working for me for years. Like this thing's consistent as heck. Like you've heated a many a hot pockets for me. Now you're giving it freezer burn.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he is getting older.
Of course.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess we even saw flashes last year, right? We even saw flashes this year, earlier on in this season. So it could be just a cold spell more than anything. I had to think about that for a moment.
Yeah.
But a cold spells happen. Slumps happen. I saw a video, I think, was it our buddy Kool-Aid posted on X, a video of him, last one to leave practice, putting up shots, and they were falling, right? So, I mean, I think he realizes that it's something that he can, continue to work at and develop his craft at. Not that he was never a certified bucket getter to begin with, but make sure that he's, in the gym still, putting up shots. Mechanics are a big part in the league. Travel, age, as we talked about. There's so many factors with shooting.
Yeah. And it's also like such a mental thing too, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to think with the, with the losses piling up, with the shots not falling down, like at a certain point, that has to start really weighing on you, as a player. And I mean, it's just the fact that it's like, it's like a lot of the guys off the bench that we're bringing on, albeit guys like Isaiah Livers, he's still working his way back from injury. He's been a career 40+% 3-point shooter wherever he's been. I don't think that just suddenly goes away.
Right.
But I mean, it is important to point out that he hasn't been shooting the ball, from a great percentage since he's come back. Even guys like Marcus Sasser, who we've seen, like his flashes and his streaks when he's on fire. I mean, he can be like the best scorer on the court for both teams at times, but there also can be these points where, it just feels like, oh, it's been like 2 games since Marcus Sasser's made a shot.
Right.
And, like, and if he's not making shots, it's not like his defense is all NBA level to where it's keeping him on the court,
Mhm, mhm.
you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. He's another guy too that, well, rookie, it's hard to have a guy like that know his ceiling or know even what he's capable of doing this season for you when he was definitely a late first round pick himself. Um, no, I'm not too concerned about Sasser either. I think even reps in practice can be a confidence booster for a guy like that. Um, I just think towards the end of the season we might be seeing him a little bit more. But again, a guy who's athletic, who can pass the ball, facilitate well, but also we've seen his stroke. Um, with being so young, there's not a lot to worry about. The potential's there. The potential's
Yeah,
there. And for me, that's what I'm excited about. So
yeah. And I think and I think one last thing, like, about the Pistons, and I think this will kinda be the main like, our kinda like our main topic, and I think, kind of the elephant in the room, so to speak,
mhm,
for the Pistons in the season, thus far. In order for this team to get better and to take a next level, at least how it's currently constructed, they need to find a way to get Jaden Ivey involved again
mhm,
on a consistent night to night basis
right.
because our ceiling is simply higher when he's on the court.
Yeah.
You can understand, like, some of the things around the edges of the game, like defensively, making switches, like making like a lot of the right plays. You can understand why you want a guy like Killian on the court. He does bring a lot of complementary skill sets. He has looked really good over the last couple of weeks. But having said that, he's not Jaden Ivey as a ball creator. He's not Jaden Ivey as an athlete. And, like, his ability to score and to bring flashes, but also just to change momentum of a game is something that really can bring a lot of value. And, I don't again, people go, "Oh, well, Monty had a feud with DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix, so clearly he has a feud with Jaden Ivey in Detroit." Like,
Right.
like, that's just not how human beings work.
Right.
But on top of that, like, it's just Stevie Wonder can see the speed that this guy has on the court.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it jumps off the screen. It's something that you genuinely have to blink. Like, if you blink, you will miss Jaden Ivey going coast to coast.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts, like, of how he's been handled thus far this season? And, like, do you think it still can be effective with him coming off the bench? Do you think he has to be starting? Like, where is your attitude with, like, with the Jaden Ivey situation as of right now?
Yeah. I think minutes are the important part. I don't know if starting or coming off the bench makes a massive difference in the long haul, but I would like to see him still playing 30 minutes a night. And there's
Yeah.
been a lot of games where he's been at 25 and even 20 and 15.
I think he's 7th on the team in minutes right now,
Right,
which
which I no,
there's
I
just
I
not a
would not
reason.
have that. Yeah, right,
There's
right.
just not a reason. There's not 7 guys in this team better than him.
Right, right. And I think 7 is a or I'm sorry, I'm think 30 minutes is a good number that you would put on him. Yeah, I mean, I guess early in the season, I guess I trusted Monty a little more than I do now with, I guess, his minutes because I guess I thought, oh, he's using this as a challenge for him to be more effective on the defensive end, be more aggressive even in practice and things like that. And I think he's done that, right? And again, like you mentioned, the flashes on the offensive end. It's just there's not a lot of NBA defenders who can defend that. Really, there really isn't, Sean,
No.
with
And I
that
mean
type of quickness
and
and craftiness around the rim.
and even just, like, the easy offense of, Jaden Ivey is the guy on this team that that if you're struggling offensively and you just need to create opportunities, he's the guy that can get to the line of anyone on this team. Just say, "Hey, Jaden, go downhill, get contact," like, get to the free throw line. He is the one guy on this team that can do that. And, like, and when you talk about, like, hitting singles and, like, how you do those little things that can, like, get you back into a game, someone like that who can create those opportunities is, someone who's massively
Right.
valuable.
Yeah.
And, obviously, I think especially with Jalen Duren out of the lineup over the next couple of weeks, the offense, the starting five is going to have a lot of experimentation. There's going to be a lot of moving around. So I'm sure Jaden Ivey is going to start getting more and more of those chances. But, at the same light, it is one of those things where, like you said, like, at first it's like, all right, like let Monty cook, it's like one of those things. But I think, if there is, because I mean, listen, everyone deserves some form of blame when you're losing 19 straight games.
Right.
The legitimate criticism of the Monty Williams era thus far very much can be the Jaden Ivey handling.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
but it's definitely not too late, and it's not like he hasn't played well in moments when he's been on the court.
Sure. Yeah. Right. And all Pistons fans are going to agree with that, I think.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. We just want to see Jaden Ivey play basketball because, we think with Cade Cunningham on the court and with him, we think these guys can win more games.
Right. And if you recall from the summertime, he was the one guy that you said that you want to invest your stock into. If there's one NBA player, because of the flashes we saw even last year too, and man, he's only 20 years old, right?
Yep.
Not 21 yet. So that is something that I think we need to utilize more. Just Jaden Ivey himself. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, one more thing that, like really helped me step back and take perspective of like where the Pistons are at right now. And, I already know the comments of, like, oh, you guys are just coping, whatever. And you know what? Maybe I am. No, but James Edwards III, again, like shout out to the GOAT. He released an article earlier today talking about how, just like setting perspective of how many games these guys have played together or, namely haven't played together. How, Troy, just off the top of your head, just taking a guess, Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, how many games do you think they've played together? Or yep, yeah, those 4.
6.
11. But if you take out Asar Thompson and you just do Cade, Ivey, and Duren, it's only 20 games.
Yeah. Wow.
And I didn't even realize this either, but that sprained ankle last week for Jalen Duren, I think that was his according to Pistons Talk, that was his either 7th or 8th ankle injury since entering the NBA. So when you talk about just the stretch of luck or lack thereof
Right.
that the Pistons have had, and just, the lack of time that those guys have seen on the court, it would just feel like an atrocity if you broke those pieces up so prematurely just because of the fear of this going too south for one season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great perspective I didn't really think of is panic mode, yes, but hitting the wrong buttons on the panic mode is another story, right?
Right. Like, yeah, 100%. Like, again, I am of the opinion that, that even changes around the margins can be a massive impact. Like if you can bring in someone who can give you, more consistent minutes off the bench on a night to night basis, like that makes this team more competitive. And like, and I think especially like, like the things that have been killing the Pistons are the things in the margins. Like they've like through this stretch, they've had moments of good play. They've had games where they've looked competitive. They've had things that you can, like build off of at times. But, it's been the turnovers of late. It's not knowing how to finish games. It's the, like those repeated mistakes. And again, it seems like a lot of those mistakes happen when, like when key guys go to the bench and, that second unit takes over,
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a great point. The core is strong, but we do need to have some conversations about what moves to make, but at the same time, these core is the core moving forward. So
yeah, 100%. Like, there's still guys on this team where it's like, yeah, they can be an all-star someday. There are guys where it's like, okay, this team, realistically can get competitive in this conference. But, again, in order to do so, it's time to, now that we see, even though we still haven't seen a lot of games with those guys together, we've seen enough to
Yeah.
know what those guys need around them to succeed, let
Yeah.
alone just start winning some games.
Yeah. Yeah. You got it, Sean.
So ultimately, again, people, might like call me crazy, but I still think there's a lot of reason to be hopeful. Like anytime you have a talent like Cade, where like he's as good as he is, and granted, like, do I think he's like an all NBA type player right now? No. Do I think he's like an Anthony Edwards type guy where he's like transcendent and just takes your team to another level instantly? Not right as of right now. Like, you can't really say that. No, but he's still a guy you can absolutely build around. And if you put the right pieces, like around him, he very much can be an all NBA player. He
Right.
very much, has that tutelage. And I mean, man, like ultimately they just need to really put him in the best position to succeed. And I
Yeah.
mean that's what this all comes back to, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know. I guess kind of shifting gears here a little bit, but what would you challenge Pistons fans to look for when they're watching these games? Because clearly not entertainment for victories, right? I mean, what would you challenge Pistons fans to really start paying attention to with this core roster?
I mean, obviously, like everyone's viewing is going to be a little bit different, right? For me, I try to tune in, and like when I'm tuning in, obviously, you know, wanting to see this team be competitive consistently, but for me, honestly, it's like how do they show those like signs of growth, like especially throughout the season? Like how does the turnover margins, develop as the season goes on? Like Kincaid, like get better shooting from beyond the arc, like what do those minutes look like for, like Jaden Ivey? And also like how can we get Asar Thompson, like back to the Asar Thompson of the first couple of weeks of,
Right.
of the league? Cause not that he still hasn't been awesome, like he has been, but like it almost feels like he's been, like ever since he's gone to the bench, it's almost feels like he's been, more of a spot up shooter when
Right.
that's been the weakest part of his game.
Sure.
So it's like, he's such a great cutter. He's such like a transcendent athlete. He's so awesome in the open court. Like for me, like this team, like they have flashes where they're really fun. Like when
Mhm.
they're like this team can have like a lot of highlights, get out in the open court. They can hang with anybody on a night to night when they choose to, right? So I think ultimately for me, like, tuning in the rest of this season is like, for one, like what little changes can they make in the coming weeks? Because I mean, that December 15th date, Troy, it's not just fastly approaching. It's just about here. Like at the
Yeah.
end of this
It's
week,
Thursday, right? It's
yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah. At the end of this week, the majority of the league will be eligible to be traded. And then a
Yeah.
month later, the rest of the league will be
Yeah.
eligible to be traded.
Right.
So, for all intents and purposes, like that's like not something that's far off. And,
Mhm.
I think ultimately, like when especially in a league where you have like 15-man rosters, like one or two changes or just one or two role players that can come in and make a difference, in my opinion, would help this team drastically in the interim. And again,
Yeah.
like I still think that you can make changes, but also still have that financial flexibility going into the offseason.
Right, right, and that financial flexibility might be one of the other keys to this,
Oh,
right?
100%.
So,
100%.
and
I
I
mean,
guess I didn't realize. I guess a year ago right now, I was thinking, okay, this upcoming summer might be the year where we drop the big bomb, but a good bomb on a free agent. But now I'm starting to think, okay, free agent destination might not be the number one thing on the top free agents list, but the right free agents to piece around the core, to piece
right.
around a Cade. That's I think where Pistons fans' heads should be leaning towards. So
Right. And like again, and could Detroit have gotten some form of free agent? Could they have like made a move? Like I'm sure they could have, but they probably would have had to, significantly overpay to a mark in which that would have probably not been worth it. It
yeah,
would have not set them up to be successful. And in my opinion, like again, not that this upcoming free agency class, like is a world beating class either, but I just think, you know, especially if anything we've seen over like the first couple of weeks, like I don't know if a Cam Johnson is preventing what was transpiring over this the first month,
Mhm.
you know? Like does Cam Johnson cuts that down to like what, 12,
Sure.
13
Right.
maybe?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like again, it's like it's difficult. You can only, come back so many times and, like talk about the silver linings of a 19 game losing streak because
Yeah.
there aren't many, right?
Right.
Like it's just it is what it is. It speaks for itself at a certain point. But
Yeah.
again, to me, the like it is a hole that they've put themselves in. But it becomes fascinating because, it means that, now like we knew this was an important season for this team. Now, this has become the most important couple months of the Troy Weaver tenure.
Yeah. Right. Right. Because we I don't know if giving him a pass because of it's new, because we're rebuilding, because of Cade's injury, but it just seems like everything we had something to look forward to. Of, okay, things aren't going right because this, because that. Just wait till next year. Just wait till this move. Just wait till this draft. And now it's kind of like, oh, everything we've been waiting for has got to this point, and we're only a 2-win team.
Mhm.
So I think in that case, yeah, I mean, this is not just the most important time. This is the biggest pressure moment on this guy's
For
tenure
sure.
as a Piston. So
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And I can't disagree with that. And, like I still think that, he can definitely, make some moves and, ultimately we'll see what comes of it. But again, it's gonna be fascinating at the very least, right?
yeah,
Um, you know, getting
definitely.
getting back to the in-season tournament, getting back to the Pacers a little bit.
Yeah,
Troy, as a Pacers fan, or like as a Pacers side piece fan,
there we go.
OG Anunoby.
Hmm.
It just feels like it makes all the sense in the world.
I
And
actually hadn't thought about it till you said it before we recorded. The more I think about it, of course, the more I like it because Halliburton does need wings. Um,
which, by the way, they drafted one, and that's a whole other conversation. Jarris Walker, where the
yeah,
heck is he?
he's in the G League,
Yeah, I
but
know,
I
I know.
I was gonna say he's just a rookie, Sean. Give him a break. But I saw him in preseason, Sean. The hype really isn't there. I'm serious. Like it's not that because I think an immediate reaction is to be like, oh, Jarris Walker's not playing because he's just not good enough to be on the roster,
Yeah,
or be on the court, I should say.
yeah.
Um,
No, he does. He's not
he's just
skillful enough
he's not.
to contribute.
I don't see a lot of upside, is what I'm trying to say. I really don't see a good ceiling for this guy. Maybe this podcast will
Think they
haunt me in
missed
years to come, but I don't see it. I do not see it at all.
at this point. It feels like his destiny is to be the trade piece in whatever move they make to improve the Pacers.
Sure, sure.
And I mean, there was the report last week that Tyrese Halliburton has been talking to stars about coming to play in Indiana. And,
Which is awesome. Yeah,
yeah. And, if anything, Troy, it feels like we are watching in real time the scenario that you and I talked about when this man was traded to the Pacers in the first place.
yeah, yeah,
Because
definitely.
because we even said like last year when the Kings were having their success. And again, the Kings still have a lot of reasons to feel good about where they're at this current time. The Kings, still look pretty good. Like whenever Domantas Sabonis is on the court, like he's running their offense. He does help, like he has helped that team tremendously since being in in Sacramento, but Tyrese is already better than De'Aaron Fox right now. I know De'Aaron Fox is really good. I know he's like another all-star caliber guard. He's
Yeah,
not Tyrese Halliburton.
correct,
He's not he's older than Tyrese Halliburton. And
correct.
and as of right now, like more expensive, I believe, than Tyrese Halliburton, even though Halliburton just signed a max. But
Right. They
At the
had two great players. They had to gamble on one to be the face of the franchise. They unfortunately lost the gamble. But as you mentioned to start this, De'Aaron Fox is still a heck of a player, and Sabonis is too. So to have those two together, yeah, you're going to win games. But are you going to compete for a championship? I don't think so.
No.
But
And
could the Pacers in at least 2 or 3 years?
oh, the Pacers have an insanely long runway now, Troy, because
Mhm.
I mean, Tyrese Halliburton, like he's already a top 10 player in the league right
Yeah.
now.
Right.
Right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's already shown so much room for improvement. Character-wise, like he is a guy. Like leadership has everything that you want. Like he checks like what box doesn't he check, Troy?
Yeah.
Defense. But other than that, Troy, what box doesn't he check?
Yeah.
Even then,
Not
he turns it up
yeah.
when it's time.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, he checks pretty much every box on my offensive game. But the assist is, I think, is most impressive, to be honest with you. The scoring's there, the three-point shooting's there, but my goodness, how that guy can facilitate the basketball, how he can find open teammates, how he can make everyone on that roster better because he's on the court.
And you put
That is a skill that maybe I can count on one hand for sure, maybe two, of how many players can really make every player on their team better. And Halliburton's on that list for sure. So
100%. Conversely, on the other side of this whole thing in the in-season tournament, there's, if the Indiana Pacers are the big winners of
yeah.
the in-season tournament this last weekend, the biggest loser, no pun intended, Zion Williamson in the New
Mhm.
Orleans Pelicans.
Right.
I mean, going into that weekend, biggest stage of his career thus far, going up against LeBron James, the Los Angeles Lakers, you know, and it's not like Zion doesn't have a squad around him. He has a great roster and an incredible chance to be competitive right now if they wanted to be. But Troy, I don't know what happened to this best shape of his entire career thing. I don't know what happened to this staying, staying committed to the mission and to the team and focusing on basketball. But I mean, it was just a topic of conversation all weekend about Zion's condition or lack thereof. And it's just one of those things where, especially when he's going up against a guy who's 39 years old, who granted, is perhaps the greatest basketball player to ever live, but 39 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were to just take out all of the aging and just look at those two guys side to side as athletes,
Right.
Zion would be
Current
the guy who
athletes.
looked like
Yes.
he was 39 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is such a shame because, I mean, do you remember the Zion cam, Sean? Do you remember that in the 2019 March Madness
Oh my
tournament?
God. I mean, Zion at Duke was
Yeah.
was a two-way monster. This was a guy who did it on both ends of the court. But for whatever reason, ever since he's gotten to the league, it's like that entire perception or that entire mission has just been completely shoved to the wayside. And I don't know if it's because he got drafted to the Pelicans and not to the Knicks like he seemingly wanted to, but I mean, you got your money now, Zion. Like we all know, like you've gotten to the All-Star game, Zion. Like what at this point, what is it going to take?
Yeah.
And if I'm
Yeah.
a Pelicans fan, or if I'm a Pelicans fan, or I'm in the Pelicans front office, it's like, what do you do? Because reports say that he won't listen when approached about his conditioning and about his dieting. And on top of that, it's not like he has a whole lot of trade value right now. But on the other hand, is that the guy you want to trade? Because you've seen what he can do when he gets in shape. But
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But if he's not producing, then is he really that guy? You know what I mean? In a league
right,
this deep, you have to be competitive each and every night,
right.
because any team can beat any team. So with that, I'm on the camp of you have to trade him, Sean. I don't care of his flashes. I don't care of his accolades. he's not producing now. Get a player that will.
But what's his value? Like
And
legitimately, like
that's where it gets tough. I don't know. I really don't know. Do you have any guesses?
I legitimately I legitimately couldn't tell you. Like maybe I could see I could see like Charlotte calling and going, "Hey, we'll give you Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier, and a first."
Yeah.
And I could even see them trying to bargain that down. You know what I mean? But you legitimately, how do you determine that guy's value right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like like it's just it's below the floor, and like you have like it's one of those things where like you literally have Stephen A. Smith going on national television saying that chefs in New Orleans are actively looking for Zion, and that he will quote unquote eat the table. And it's like,
Right.
listen, I don't want to get into the whole fat shaming thing. As a
Yeah.
fellow bigger man myself, I have no room to talk on that point. I know how much of a struggle it can be with dieting and with conditioning. The difference is I'm not a $200+ million athlete whose entire job is predicated on their conditioning.
Sure. Sure. Right.
That's the difference, Troy. And that's where it becomes a conversation.
Right. Yeah. 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 That's a great point. Because you have all the time in the world, right? You have all the off season. You have the best trainers in your corner. You have the
Yeah, you have
best.
the best
Yeah.
trainers. You can have access to the best chefs, to the best food, to the best ingredients. Like, he could literally have someone living with him at all times, making his food, doing his dieting, helping with his training. I mean, we see LeBron, he puts $1 million into it, just into his body
Yeah.
alone. A
Right.
million dollars a year.
Yeah. It's absolutely insane, of how we've progressed, in the science of sports medicine and just dieting and nutrition in general. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's sad because this is a guy I've been rooting for since Duke, and I know you have too.
He's
Um,
so likable. Like
yeah,
he like especially when he's at his best. He is a guy that like we were talking about him coming into the league as a guy who could potentially be the next face. Like this was
yeah,
another guy alongside that, like who could be the next LeBron
mhm, of
in that light
course,
with his athleticism, with his ability on both sides. And I mean, the thing is, Zion still has moments, even right now, as a bigger guy, where his athleticism pops out. But I mean, it's like as Charles Barkley, like he was talking about this like the other week. It's like at some point he's gonna get injured. And at some point, like being this heavy and playing this much is gonna take a toll on his body. He's not gonna be able to come back as the same guy if he keeps doing this to himself.
hmm hmm
And
yeah, that's
like,
reality. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Now, the last guy that we had to have a conversation about their weight and their conditioning was a guy named Nikola Jokic.
mhm.
And he was able to find a way to turn that around. And now, as of last year, he was an NBA champion. But the difference is, Troy, I don't know if Zion Williamson is the humble or has the humility of Nikola Jokic. And quite frankly, I don't think he has the affinity for his franchise like Nikola Jokic has. Turn it around. I don't like it. I genuinely think Zion is not going to change his diet unless he's in a place where he wants to be. I legitimately think at this point he could be using his nutrition as a mode of almost almost like kind of like protest almost.
When's his contract up? Do you know?
Well, he just extended this off season.
Okay,
So, I think his max like kicks in like he is locked in
sure.
for all intents and purposes, but I to me it just feels inevitable at some point that something's going to happen because the Zion New Orleans relationship has been one of the weirdest relationships in the league almost from day one.
Yeah, yeah, it has. It really has. It really has. And I there was all that talk last year and even to this year, the team that you mentioned, New York, team that was picking third in that 2019
Yep.
draft,
Yep.
a team that had the worst record that year, I believe, to
Yep.
try to get to one. But I mean, do you try to call New York if you're New Orleans and say, listen, our guy wants to be on your team. What are you willing to give up? I mean, but does New York even pick up the phone? You know?
I mean, at this point, like, like if I'm a team, that would be looking to get Zion, like I'm almost waiting for New Orleans to start taking like to start making calls or for them to announce, hey, we'd start listening to offers because at this point, I mean, who are you bidding against? Yourself?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like who's going to be driving up the price to
Yeah.
to
Right.
get that guy as in his current condition?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a it's a mess, and I don't really know the solution. We're two guys who love basketball. This is going to be, I think, deeper than you and I, Sean.
Well, no, yeah, no, we know the solution. It's just whether or not he actually wants to commit to the solution. You can lead a horse to water.
Right. I guess I'm thinking more of it on a GM perspective.
For sure. Oh yeah, no, David Griffin's screwed. He's
Right.
dug himself this insane
Right.
hole. And it's weird because he's done everything else right.
Mhm.
Like he's put a competitive roster around that guy. He's got a great coach. He's got solid veterans. He's got fun young rookies. He's
Yeah.
been good with the salary cap. Like he's actually like in a pretty cool city. Like
Mhm.
I don't like what else do you want?
Yeah. 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 I don't know.
Like where else do you go in the league that's a better situation for this than him right now?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's so hard.
Yeah.
I have no
It's
answers.
it's inexplicable. You know what else is inexplicable, Troy?
What, Sean?
What the hell's going on in Milwaukee? What is happening with the Milwaukee Bucks? If we're talking about another storyline that came out of the in-season tournament, it's
Mhm.
it's what came out of the Milwaukee Bucks. Namely, after the game, there was a heated conversation in the locker room, pretty much a team meeting. Adrian Griffin was reportedly talking about how the team needs to be better at rebounding, and Bobby Portis was apparently like, we need to be better at executing. We need to be, we need to be more aggressive in our play calling, pretty much flat out saying the coaching has to be better too. And, this was a pretty, the coaching search that the Milwaukee Bucks are making in the offseason was one of the biggest stories in the league. And when they elected to bring in Adrian Griffin and go with a first time coach, Giannis met with him and was like, that's my guy.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, he fires Terry Stotts before the season starts. Giannis and him like have some weird altercations, like on the court. Giannis from a body language perspective, like just is totally off right now. There was that weird moment where he like just straight up ignored Dame on the court the other night when he was
Right.
trying to say, hey, like you and me, you and me.
Right. You
And
need that chemistry. You need
mhm.
that Damon Giannis
And
chemistry.
listen, I think anyone that thought that this was just gonna be an instant, easy day one fix was fooling themselves. Because when you're a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's so used to having the ball in your hands, being the guy who mainly runs the offense, who's doing everything for your team, and all of a sudden you're passing the keys to another guy, even if he's a star, even if he's a guy that you want, he's the guy that you
Mhm.
wanted the team to go out and get. And so much so that you signed an extension immediately after going and getting him. Even then, it is still a really difficult adjustment. But having said that, Troy, you'd think it'd be looking more promising as of right now.
Of
You'd
course.
think they'd be looking like they'd be having a little bit more fun. And the tricky thing about it is, Troy, what do they have to trade?
Oh, no,
Nothing.
no, they're cashed in. This is the product.
This
This
is it. And and if this is it, it's really it with S and H in the front of it.
Yeah.
Like, especially when you're a team where your expectations are championship or bust. I mean, could we see Adrian Griffin lose his job midseason? Is that out of the
I don't
question?
I don't I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that.
I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but certainly after the season, certainly after the season.
Well, I think what makes this even extra tricky or more tricky is how disappointing your season was last year. How you were the team in the East to beat, how you were the literal number one seed who had every path in front of them to take to go to the finals, and you get out in the first round, almost avoiding a sweep from the Miami Heat, who barely squeaked in the in-season tournament. So
Yeah.
yeah, that adds a different dynamic, I think, to this as well.
Yeah. Without a doubt. I mean, ultimately, like the biggest thing is I legitimately question how much longer of a window they're actually going to have. Now, granted, if Giannis and Dame figure out this pick and roll thing, they're going to be immediately more dangerous. The only thing I have no faith is that they're going to be able to figure out, because I think their problem is strictly personnel with this issue. Troy, any defense this team had is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like the thing that made this team so threatening wasn't just that you had Giannis who could come down, like who could run downhill and was literally unstoppable as an offensive force with everything he could do in that aspect. It was also the fact that on the other end, you had guys like Drew Holiday as a pest. You had Brook Lopez, who because of Drew's ability on ball was to be, was able to be like that anchor defensive player of the year. But you know what you also had? You also had an elite wing alongside Giannis named Chris Middleton, who could in his own right change games, be clutch, do different things. But Troy, that guy I think is gone. Or at least the guy that won a championship with them, or the guy that was that level. I don't think he can be there again on a night-to-night basis. Can he give you 5 or 10 minutes of that in a playoff game? Absolutely. Do I think he's going to be that ever again over an 82 game stretch? No shot.
And I think that's just the downfall of getting older,
Of
not being
course, of
able
course. It's
to.
not his fault. That's just Father Time's undefeated.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, no, that's not true. Father Time lost to Tom Brady, and he's currently losing to LeBron James.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't have much to add to that besides what you said.
yeah, but I mean, yeah. Otherwise, like, so ultimately, I worry, and I do think, again, I do think there's a lot of reason to, still be optimistic. I do still think they can make a finals run this year. They're definitely good enough from a talent perspective. But again, if we were to just do a pulse check on all of the teams, right, of all the teams in the league right now, they're definitely up there for like one of the weirdest situations, because, expectations are high, like you want to be winning games, and it's not a great situation to be in.
No,
So,
it's not.
it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. But I mean, ultimately, one thing we can say for sure, we got parity, man, like all throughout this league from top to bottom. And I mean, Troy, even teams like Orlando now are
Yeah,
teams you have
second
to take
seed,
seriously. Teams
second
like
seed.
Indiana are going to be in your path. Boston is looking better than, as good as they've been. I don't know, man. It's definitely not going to be easy
No, for the Pistons, yeah, it's not gonna be at all, but as we've said before, of course,
for,
we're Pistons
for the Bucks or for
fans.
the Pistons. But I mean,
Yeah, yeah, right, we're Pistons fans, we'll always cheer for the Pistons, but, it's okay to enjoy the league too. It's okay to
Oh, I mean,
enjoy
yeah. I
the
mean,
individual talent.
as much as we talk the Pistons, this is an NBA pod too, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that's right,
and I
that's
mean,
right.
ultimately, my other advice would be, like, especially with going through a losing streak like this, try to watch other basketball as well.
Yeah,
Don't make your
absolutely.
only basketball viewing be the Pistons,
Yeah,
because I promise you, there are some amazing teams to watch throughout this league, and you can
right,
still have fun as a basketball fan. But
yes.
Troy, always a pleasure to be able to come back and talk to you about the Pistons, even during these rough stretches. I promise you, Troy, we will be able to talk about a win at some
We
point. It's
will,
gonna happen, damn it. It's
it
gonna
will,
happen.
it's gonna happen.
We're gonna manifest it, Troy. We're gonna
Yes,
manifest it together, you and me and the listeners at home. Speaking of the listeners at home, thank you guys so much for tuning into the podcast, making from half court appointment viewing each and every week. If you like this video, be sure you like it down below. Smash that mother notification bell, and also be sure you subscribe so you're not missing any of the content here as well. Also, be sure you follow my guy Troy on X at TroySergey44, and catch out our guy Jeff Iafrady on the Morning Woodward Show Monday through Friday. You can catch myself here on the channel, and follow me on X at Sean Have Court. With that, gentlemen, Thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.